Hi, it's Katrina! Bizarre cenote skeletons. The cenotes of Mexico are a huge draw for tourists who like to scuba dive and experience another world. But one flooded sinkhole in southern Mexico has terrified local villagers so much that they refuse to visit, and for good reason. Underwater archaeologists recently found a submerged cavern that was littered with elongated skulls and human bones. Known as Shackled Yam, the cenote is located in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula and was sometimes used by the ancient Maya as a place for sacrificial offerings. The eerie cenote sits just outside the ruins of the ancient Maya city of Mayapan. Mayapan was once a political center from the 12th to the 15th century AD. The city was enclosed within a stone wall, where the cenotes acted as a vital source of water for the 17,000 residents who lived there. But over time, local legends were whispered about Shackled Yam, including the fact that it was guarded by a feathered horse-headed serpent that perched in the tree before spinning around in the air and taking a diving leap into the water. For 2 weeks in 2014, curious archaeologists dove into the cenote to explore. It appeared something sinister took place inside, and perhaps knowledge of this was passed down over the years, leading to the development of legends and myths. On the first day, they discovered 2 chambers in the cavern connected by a tunnel, with bones scattered across the floor. The team identified 10 skulls in the first chamber and 5 in the second, and they think they'll find even more. If that wasn't strange enough, these weren't normal skulls either. The skulls were elongated, intentionally flattened during infancy. With no marks to indicate any exact causes of death, researchers believe the people who were buried there probably weren't actually sacrificed. And with few artifacts located, scientists aren't sure whether the people were elite or if they received any kind of special treatment. Belonging to both males and females, ranging from teenagers to adults, questions still remain about the reason why the bodies were there in the first place. The fact that the cenote lies to the south of Mayapan, the direction associated with the underworld, makes researchers believe the dead may have been buried there to await their next cycle of creation. Back then, the ancient Mayans would have wanted to avoid burying people near the rest of the population, and they certainly wouldn't have wanted to drink the water there either, which is why the cenotes may have been excluded from the boundaries drawn on original maps of the city. Either way, these strange elongated skulls make for a chilling, if not interesting, discovery. The San Jose Galleon. In 1708, off the coast of Cartagena, Colombia, a large ship full of treasure was on its way back to Spain when disaster struck. The San Jose Galleon was attacked by British forces lying in wait at the port to steal the treasure. As the captain pushed forward, the British Navy tried to board the galleon 3 different times to take it as their own, but the ship then burst into flames. It sank to the bottom of the sea, along with the 600 people and $20 billion worth of gold, silver, and jewels that were on board. Since then, the San Jose has been lying on the ocean floor, lost for centuries. In 2015, the Colombian government announced that they had found the San Jose, but instead of being a celebrated find, it became the center of an international custody dispute, with many wanting a piece of the pie. A robotic submarine called the Remus 6000, which is operated by the US-based Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, officially discovered the ship. The nearly 13-foot-long underwater autonomous vehicle can explore up to 3.7 miles below the sea's surface. It was able to descend just 30 feet above the San Jose to snap photographs of the galleon, as well as its bronze, dolphin-engraved cannons, which researchers used to distinguish it was indeed the San Jose. The original salvage company stated they found the ship in the early 1980s, but kept it quiet. Former Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos announced that the Colombian Navy had actually found the galleon in 2015. Spain says that it doesn't matter. The billions belong to the Spanish crown. As experts and historians battle over this sunken treasure, the ship, which had been submerged for 300 years, continues to rest on the sea floor with its riches up for grabs. The exact location of the holy grail of shipwrecks has been kept private to stop divers and treasure seekers from looting the treasure. Underwater city of Chang. Chang is often called the Atlantis of the East. The small underwater city of Chang is a gorgeous and mysterious time capsule of imperial China. Perfectly preserved 131 feet under Qiandao Lake in Zhejiang Province stands the magnificent stone architecture from the Ming and Qing dynasties. The submerged city of Chang is so majestic, the underwater complex is also known as Lion City in Mandarin. It was purposely flooded in 1959 to make way for a dam and the hydroelectric power station. About 300,000 residents were relocated for the project, some of whom had families that had lived in the city for hundreds of years. But they didn't have a choice. The city was flooded and forgotten. In 2001, the city was rediscovered when the Chinese government organized an expedition with professional divers to see what remained of the lost metropolis. Exploration and interest increased even further about 10 years later when the magazine Chinese National Geography published illustrations of what the city might have looked like in its glory days. Despite being completely submerged underwater, Chang has remained astonishingly well preserved. The city has been protected from wind, rain, and sun erosion. Underwater photographs revealed the city had 5 entrance gates instead of the traditional 4. There were 265 archways on the city streets featuring carved stonework of dragons, phoenixes, lions, and historical inscriptions. Originally, China was going to send submarine tours to the city for the general public, but plans were scrapped due to fears that tours would damage the historic buildings there. There's still a lot to explore and map out, so today only advanced divers with lots of experience can get up close to the ruins. Atlil Yam skeleton. Off the coast of Israel, a submerged prehistoric settlement known as Atlil Yam has been drawing the attention of researchers for decades. It lies 26 to 40 feet below sea level. A marine archaeologist named Ehud Galili first discovered the site in 1984, and ever since then, underwater excavations have revealed a trove of fascinating discoveries. The ruins have been incredibly well preserved by the sand, dating all the way back to 7000 BC. As researchers set out to locate, excavate, and salvage the prehistoric settlements, they found 17 submerged sites, including 13 Neolithic sites near the shore. 7 megaliths that weighed about 1,320 pounds each are arranged in a stone semicircle in the center of everything. Obvious cut marks carved into the stones, arranged around the freshwater spring, suggest that they may have been used for a water ritual. A stone well excavated at the site was found to contain animal bones, stone, flint, wood, bone artifacts, and human remains, suggesting it was not only a water well, but a disposal pit. Archaeologists found actual skeletons under the water, which is extremely rare. Researchers have evidence that the inhabitants were some of the first to transition from being hunter-gatherers to more settled farmers. The team found traces of more than 100 different plant species that either grew at the site or were collected from the wild, as well as animal remains, including those from domesticated animals. Sheep and pig bones may be evidence the residents raised and hunted animals for food. Fishing also seemed to play a big role in the society, with over 6,000 fish bones located during excavation. There is still more to learn about one of the earliest settlements found, with evidence of domesticated cattle, including how it became submerged. An Italian study found that a volcanic collapse of Mount Etna 8,500 years ago may have caused a 131-foot-high tsunami that would have engulfed some of the Mediterranean coastal cities. But the fact that the megalithic stone circle still remains standing in the place it was constructed leads some researchers to disregard the idea that a tsunami wiped out the settlement. Some point to the fact that it could have been climate change that caused the glaciers to melt and sea levels to rise enough that it would have flooded the land slowly. Luckily, the unique conditions of clay and sandy sediment under saltwater are the perfect conditions to keep everything well preserved and allow researchers to explore this ancient site even more. Want to give a big shout out to Javier Aguilar and Bronwyn Crocker. Thanks so much for watching and spending time with us. If you are new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button to join the Origins Explained family. Doggerland. 20,000 years ago, the British Isles were connected to mainland Europe by a land bridge known as Doggerland. Is it just me, or does Doggerland sound like a city from Mad Max? Now completely submerged, the landmass allowed early Mesolithic people to travel more easily. It was always assumed that a landslide decimated the area off the coast of Norway around 6150 BC. This triggered a tsunami in the North Sea that flooded the British coastline, which likely killed thousands of people who lived by the water. Originally believing the tsunami was the culprit for separating Britain from mainland Europe, new research published by archaeologists argues that Doggerland may have actually survived as an archipelago of islands. After 15 years of examining the underwater remains, researchers mapped the territory's marshes, rivers, and other geological features and took samples of underwater rock. By studying these underwater sediment cores, samples showed evidence of the flood, which would have killed anyone on the shoreline when it struck 8,200 years ago. Even though the tsunamis would have killed many of the existing hunter-gatherers and fishing societies along the coast, researchers believe the landmass would have survived the cataclysmic event. Oil companies drilling in the North Sea use seismic survey data to construct a digital model of the 18,000 square miles of what Doggerland looked like before it was flooded. The wooded valley slowly disappeared over time, so the people who lived here thousands of years ago had to move to higher ground. Even today, fishermen continue to find ancient bones and tools, evidence of the people who lived here so long ago. If you think all of this is in the ancient past, think again. Climate scientists say that a similar situation could affect anyone who lives within 37 miles of shoreline today, especially if the polar ice caps continue to melt at an accelerated rate. Do you think we should be worried about a tsunami like this happening anytime soon? Let me know in the comments below. Cenote Angelita. Located just 10.5 miles south of Tulum, Mexico, Cenote Angelita is a haven for scuba divers who want to explore the past. A series of sinkholes and caves in the jungle lead to the submerged cenote, a 200-foot deep pool nestled into the dense surroundings. For those who can brave the depths, they can experience an unexpected surprise in the water-filled cave. Inside, under the water, there is a river that flows to the ocean. Wondering how this happens? It starts with the creation of the cenote itself. As limestone bedrock collapses, it sinks and forms a pit, which acts as a reservoir that fills with fresh groundwater and saltwater. As organic matter like plants and vegetation decompose in the water, they create a layer of halocline, which is a cloud of hydrogen sulfide that separates the fresh water from the salt water below. This is what happened at Cenote Angelita, which is a marvel on its own. But to make this particular cenote stand out even more from the hundreds of others in the Yucatan, submerged trees within the underwater cave make it a truly magical underworld. The cenote was once a holy site worshipped by the ancient Maya, and you can see why. Anyone who dives here will fall straight into a blue underworld, and the deeper you go, the more trees you will see, submerged in a wispy fog. The Maya must have thought the gods themselves lived down here. These unique elements of the water's chemistry allow the denser water to sink to the bottom and gives the optical illusion that an underground river flows through. Croatian boat wreck. 3,200 years after it sank, a remarkable boat wreck was discovered off the coast of Croatia. Marine archaeologists in France found the unique Bronze Age boat in a cove in 2014. The sunken ship was first seen by fishermen in 2008, just 600 meters from the beach. However, they believed it to be a fairly recent wreck. Everyone kind of knew it was there, but ignored it. However, researchers from the Archaeological Museum of Istria believed the boat to be quite old and were intrigued. They decided to investigate the site, and the boat was determined to be from pre-Roman times. Stretching over 23 feet in length and 8 feet wide, the ship was just sleeping 6.5 feet below the surface of the water. Back in the day, shipbuilding was hard. The researchers found that the shipbuilders had used a technique of shipbuilding used in the Adriatic until the Roman era, when there were no metal fasteners available, or they were too expensive. Carefully shaped planks were sewn together with ropes, roots, or willow branches, and their sections overlapped so they didn't need any metal fasteners to bind them together. The boat is incredibly well preserved for how old it is, with most of its stitching still visible in areas and the frame largely undamaged. Multiple types of wood were used to build the boat, with experts conducting tree ring dating to determine the age, and revealed it was from around 1200 BC. Scientists hope to move it to a boat museum in Croatia so the world can marvel at the artistry. Pablo Petri. In 1904, a geologist reported discovering an ancient city in the seabed near Greece. It was the city of Pablo Petri, and in its heyday, some 4,000 years ago, it was once home to a bustling port. The area was famous for trade going back as far as the Bronze Age. Ceramics recovered confirmed that the site was once occupied by Mycenaeans as early as 3,500 BC. Instead of being based around a godlike figure or king, like many ancient cities, Pablo Petri seems to have emerged into greatness not just because of its relationship to the sea, but also because of its affinity for trade and economics. The ancient city was a sprawling network of stone buildings and two-story homes that even had plumbing. The city had a complex water management system involving gutters and canals. As archaeologists dove into the ancient city, they recovered shards of cooking pots and crockery, as well as storage vessels which were used to transport products like oil, wine, and perfumes, most likely kept to impress visitors of a higher status used to make offerings to the gods. Other items included obsidian blades and bronze figurines. Dense concentrations of these vessels in certain buildings suggest they were used as centralized storage and probably redistribution. An operation such as this would have required an advanced level of accounting and administration to keep track of everything coming in and out. Upon further exploration, researchers found the prehistoric town had intact building foundations and courtyards, as well as rock-cut tombs with graves. In 2009, an extensive underwater survey was done to map the structural remains. During the survey, 15 previously unknown buildings were discovered, including buildings and streets that date back to between 1680 and 1180 BC. It's clear that the people of Pablo Petri were in touch with all of the latest innovations. The city offers a rare opportunity to study in detail how an ancient port functioned, and even more importantly, the extent of seafaring contacts and trade in the Bronze Age. The Franklin Expedition Cemetery. Exploring the world in the 1800s was not for the faint of heart. The 19th century saw a scramble amongst European explorers to discover a polar sea route linking the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, better known as the Northwest Passage. One of these expeditions, led by Sir John Franklin, set sail in 1845 with 129 crew members. They felt extremely prepared and confident, with excellent steam engine ships and all kinds of equipment. They had heat inside the ships and 3 years' worth of tinned food. Shockingly, none of them survived. After spending a year stuck in the ice, the crew deserted their 2 vessels in hopes of making it back to civilization on foot. Meanwhile, the rest of the world waited to learn of their fate, unaware of just how bad things had gotten. Answers came through the discovery of clues such as human remains, written notes, personal belongings, and eyewitness accounts. The evidence showed that the men died in different places and at different times throughout their quest for survival. During the 1980s, archaeologist Owen Beatty excavated 3 of the explorers' remains on Beechey Island in Nunavut, Canada. The remains belonged to sailors John Hartnell, John Torrington, and William Brain, who died relatively early during the trek. After spending over a century buried in the permafrost, the bodies were found remarkably intact. The men died with high levels of lead in their blood, possibly from tinned food or their ship's water system. But a 2016 study determined that they actually died from a lung disease, such as pneumonia or tuberculosis. Their poor health and lack of food exacerbated the situation. Beechey Island contains a 4th grave belonging to Thomas Morgan, an investigator who died of scurvy in 1854 while searching for the lost Franklin expedition. The lost ships weren't discovered until 2014 and 2016, but they were found in practically pristine condition under the icy water. Climate-altering asteroid. In 2016, scientists closely examined northwestern Greenland's Hiawatha Glacier, which they suspected was keeping a secret. It has a strange semicircular movement that was a little suspicious. Good thing they looked, because they discovered a 19-mile-wide impact crater hidden beneath the ice, left behind from when an asteroid nearly a mile long struck the Earth sometime within the last 100,000 years. Some scientists theorize that the asteroid hit around 13,000 years ago during the end of the last ice age. At the time, megafauna like mammoths and mastodons were declining while humans spread throughout North America. Anyone within 310 miles of the impact would have seen a bright, massive fireball in the sky. With the energy of 7 megaton nuclear bombs, the impact would have come with a massive shockwave, a huge thunderclap, and hurricane-force winds that were felt hundreds of miles away, according to Science magazine. People in North America and Europe may have endured a rainstorm of rock debris, and the greenhouse gases from the crash would have caused more ice to melt. Meltwater would have spewed into the Atlantic Ocean, disrupting ocean currents and causing temperatures in the northern hemisphere to plummet. The discovery of the crater could potentially help to explain a cooling event called the Younger Dryas, which began around 12,800 years ago. In fact, scientists proposed the theory that an asteroid impact triggered the event, but until the crater was found, they had no physical evidence to back it up. If these suspicions are correct, it could provide answers to the extinction of megafauna as well as the disappearance of the Clovis people, a mammoth hunting group who are thought to be amongst the first humans to arrive in North America, and some of the first humans who domesticated dogs. Super gonorrhea. The development of antibiotics has saved countless lives with the ability to easily cure bacterial infections. But the microscopic culprits behind certain deadly diseases have risen to meet the challenges presented by modern medicine by evolving into new, bacteria-resistant strains. Take, for example, super gonorrhea. This is a term that is meant to convey that gonorrhea is becoming increasingly resistant to antibiotics, and thus more difficult to cure. Several countries, including France, Spain, Japan, the UK, and Australia, have seen a rise in such cases in recent years. Gonorrhea began mutating to become antibiotic resistant shortly after the development of antimicrobials during the early 20th century. Since then, the disease has become increasingly resilient, making it difficult to treat even with the so-called last line of antibiotics that doctors resort to prescribing. This leaves experts with little to no existing options for effectively treating gonorrhea cases that prove to be undefeatable by all traditional means. For this reason, the CDC recommends further research and development of new treatment, and safety first. Jigsaw skeletons. In 2001, archaeologists discovered 4 human skeletons on an island in Scotland. At first, the bodies appeared to represent typical Bronze Age burials. Initial testing determined that one corpse, belonging to a male, died around 1600 BC, and that a female had died around 1300 BC. But something about the skeletons struck researchers as odd. Buried in the fetal position, they were highly flexed in a seemingly unnatural way. Further testing determined that the male was not buried until 1000 BC, 6 centuries after he had died. The female was laid to rest 300 years after her death. Upon taking a closer look, experts noticed that the bodies had been deliberately preserved, most likely by being submerged in one of the area's many peat bogs for anywhere from 6 to 18 months. This marked the first and only known discovery of mummies in Britain. A decade later, DNA analysis revealed that the 2 bodies were made up of 6 different people's body parts. The torso, skull, and neck of the male corpse belonged to 3 other men, and the female body contained a male skull, a female torso, and an arm bone of an undetermined gender. What's more, the female mummy's skull predates the torso by anywhere from 50 to 200 years. Experts surmise that the mummies were created with the anatomy of several different family members, and that they were assembled like a jigsaw puzzle to seemingly represent one person. They don't know why this was done. Archaeologist Parker Pearson theorized that the practice served to create a so-called symbolic ancestor that possessed characteristics from multiple lineages. But not all researchers agree, including Terry Brown, a biomedical archaeology professor who suggested that the borrowed bones were used to replace body parts that had simply fallen off or been damaged. Which theory do you prefer? Let me know in the comments below. The resurrection of ancient diseases. As icy places around the world are starting to melt, scientists are becoming increasingly concerned that ancient bacteria and viruses could be released into the atmosphere after spending thousands of years frozen in permafrost. Their fears were solidified in 2016 when a 12-year-old boy died and 20 others were hospitalized after being infected with anthrax on Siberia's Yamal Peninsula. Experts theorize that a reindeer infected with the disease died around 75 years ago, and the disease was soon encased in frozen soil. The bacteria escaped during a heat wave that caused the permafrost to thaw, thereby infiltrating the local water and food supply. This very scary case left researchers fearing that deadly pathogens will repeatedly infect humans as global temperatures continue to rise. When frozen under the right conditions, bacteria can remain alive for up to 1 million years, potentially releasing what the news outlet BBC described as a Pandora's box of diseases. Thanks for that. Over 1 million reindeer died from anthrax during the 20th century alone, and most are buried in shallow graves in northern Russia. Scientists have also identified the presence of RNA from the 1918 Spanish flu virus in bodies that were buried in the Alaskan tundra. Smallpox, the bubonic plague, and other diseases are also likely present in the Arctic permafrost, waiting for their opportunity to spring back to life and infect modern humans. Experts already know that it's possible to revive long-frozen viruses and bacteria, They learned this in 2005 when they brought a 32,000-year-old worm back to life. In 2007, scientists revived 8-million-year-old and 100,000-year-old bacteria that were found frozen in Antarctica. Viruses dating back some 30,000 years were resurrected in 2014 and quickly became infectious. While they were incapable of infecting people, this proved that it's possible for other, more dangerous viruses to re-emerge and target human hosts. 2020 is proof that deadly pathogens can wreak havoc on an entire planet with little to no notice. Skulls on stakes. While excavating ahead of the construction of a new railroad bridge over southern Sweden's Strom River in 2009, archaeologists found an array of artifacts dating back to around 8,000 years ago. Left behind by Mesolithic hunter-gatherers, the collection included animal bones, tools crafted from antlers, wooden stakes, and human skull fragments. Also among the evidence were the skulls of 9 adults and 1 infant. Found deliberately lodged into a layer of stones, the skulls lacked jawbones, and 2 bore the well-preserved remains of wooden stakes, representing the first known discovery of Stone Age people mounting heads on sticks. Surrounded by a collection of animal bones that were sorted according to species, the skulls belonged to 2 females, 4 males, and 2 people between the ages of 20 and 35, according to National Geographic. Nearby, the team found the nearly complete skeleton of an infant who was either stillborn or died shortly after birth. The skulls bore obvious signs of blunt force trauma to the top of the head and other injuries, some of which showed evidence of healing. The female skulls displayed evidence of wounds to the sides and backs of the heads, while the males had blows to the face and the top of the head. In the words of researcher Fredrik Hallgren, the individuals had been recently smashed in the head and then put on display. The wounds could not be connected with the causes of death, nor was the team able to determine what type of weapon was used to inflict the injuries, or the reasons for hurting the people and putting them on display. DNA analysis revealed that 2 of the men were probably cousins or more distantly related, according to Hallgren, but this does not lead experts any closer to answers as they try to disentangle the mystery of the only case of Mesolithic people engaging in this type of burial practice. On the contrary, these prehistoric hunter-gatherers were known to respect the dead. It's believed that the skulls became separated from the bodies during decomposition. There are numerous possible reasons for the injuries, including abuse, warfare, and cultural practices. Experts believe that the skulls may have been put on stakes to honor local community members, or as trophies, but the truth for this display remains a mystery. Mummified Long. In 1959, archaeologist Michel Fleury got quite the shock when he found a preserved lung. It was inside a stone sarcophagus in the Basilica of Saint-Denis in Paris, where many French kings are buried. Along with it were a skeleton, jewelry, textile and leather fragments, and a strand of hair. The remains belong to the 6th century Merovingian queen Arnegund, the mother of King Chilperic and one of King Clotair's 6 wives. Identified based on a gold ring bearing the inscription Arnegundis, she lived sometime between 515 and 580 AD. For decades, numerous questions surrounded Queen Arnegund's lung, including whether it was mummified naturally or deliberately, and why it's her only preserved body part. In 2016, researchers concluded that the lung's remarkably intact state likely results from the copper belt that was placed around Arnegund's corpse prior to her burial. The belt deposited large amounts of copper oxide into the lung, which scientists detected during biopsies, and it had an embalming effect on the organ. Experts also determined that the queen's body was injected with a mixture of spices and aromatic plants, which may have contributed to the lung's preservation. Neanderthal cannibalism. Around 49,000 years ago, a group of hominids murdered and cannibalized 13 Neanderthals at El Cidrón, a karst cave located in modern-day northern Spain. In 1994, cave explorers discovered the victims' skeletal remains, prompting archaeologists to excavate the site. Over 400 artifacts were recovered, including animal bones and an array of stone tools. The group consisted of 3 adult males, 4 adult females, 3 teens between 12 and 15 years old, 2 juveniles between the ages of 5 and 9 years old, and 1 infant. Mitochondrial DNA analysis indicates that the individuals were a family, with the men being closely related and the women coming from outside the group. The bones lack the bite marks customary of a carnivorous animal attack, but contain cut marks made by stone tools. leading to the conclusion that the group died at the hands of other hominids rather than animals. Several of the bones show deep cuts, including evidence that they were cracked open to obtain marrow or brains. Relying mostly on a plant-based diet, the victims were malnourished when they died. It's likely that their killers were also struggling to acquire enough food, and that they murdered the group out of desperation. This morbid discovery reminds us of the alarming reality of what people are capable of when driven by hunger. Shackled skeletons from ancient Greece. In 2016, a mass grave with skeletons clamped in iron shackles was found in an ancient Greek cemetery south of Athens. There were at least 80 skeletons found shackled at the wrists, but who they were and how they got there is a mystery. Everyone appears to have been killed the same way, all tied at the hands. Most of the remains are of men who were very young and healthy at the time they were executed. Now they lay in areas of dug-out ground, some in long, neat rows, others piled on top of one another with their arms and legs twisted and their jaws frozen open. Dating between the 8th and 5th centuries BC, the cemetery holds more than 1,500 bodies, with others laid to rest in ceramic pots and other adults burned on funeral pyres. During that time, Athens was a place of unrest, with everyone fighting for power. Some researchers believe the remains could be from followers of Cylon, a noble and Olympic champion who staged a coup in Athens in 632 BC. When his coup failed, Cylon supposedly hid in the temple of Acropolis before he later escaped, but all of his supporters were killed. It will take further DNA testing to determine just who the remains belong to. Now the necropolis will be made into a site open to the public, and the shackled skeletons will get their own display underground to preserve them. Jade burial suit. The Han Dynasty in China was extremely powerful and rich. The royal and the wealthy for some reason chose a very unique burial suit that looks almost robotic, pieced together with mosaic tiles made from jade. These jade suits were extremely expensive, and for centuries people believed that these suits were just legend. Jade was the most precious stone in ancient China that symbolized purity and moral integrity. But in 1968, researchers announced the discovery of a tomb with an extremely well-preserved suit, proving the stories were real. Then they discovered another complete suit. One of them had 2,498 jade plates and over 2.5 pounds of gold wire. Subsequent discoveries of more jade suits led researchers to conclude that they were probably fairly common among the Han Dynasty's wealthiest aristocrats. Unfortunately, many, if not most, jade suits were likely lost to grave robbers at some point in history. Other suits that have been found were made up of small square or rectangular pieces, although archaeologists have found others made with triangular, trapezoid, or rhomboid pieces. The pieces were sewn together with wire, and some suits were held together with gold, silver, or silk thread. It looks like the type of string that was used depended on a person's social status. Emperors' suits were threaded with gold, while suits belonging to princes, princesses, dukes, etc. contained silver thread. Copper thread was used for the sons and daughters of those whose suits were bound with silver, and lower-ranking aristocrat suits were held together with silk. All other members of society were forbidden from having a jade burial suit at all, and they probably couldn't afford it anyway. People did not always follow these rules, and it looks like some tried to make these burial suits out of other, less expensive materials. On average, it took several years to create just one suit. These are now recognized as some of the greatest treasures in China. The Hermit King's Lair. Located near the River Trent in the countryside of central England, a site called Anchor Church Caves once served as a refuge for an exiled Anglo-Saxon king. Long regarded as an 18th century folly, in other words, a building made for purely decorative purposes, this structure probably served a real purpose. The cave house was built around 1,200 years ago and may have housed Northumbrian King Eardwulf, who was deposed and exiled for unknown reasons in 806 AD. The disgraced medieval monarch lived during a politically turbulent time that was marked by persistent fighting between kingdoms and kings. Eardwulf was removed from power, possibly by his own son, just 10 years after he murdered two of his predecessors and took the throne in 796 AD. He spent the rest of his life in exile in the neighboring rival kingdom of Mercia. As unusual as this sounds, living as a hermit in caves was one way for former royalty to take on a religious life of sorts, according to archaeologist Edmund Simons, who spoke with Live Science. A reconstruction of the cave's original plan consists of 3 rooms and a chapel. Simon said that cave dwellings like this may represent the only surviving examples of Saxon architecture. He participated in a study that identified 20 other cave houses in west-central England, dating as far back as the 5th century. During the 18th century, English aristocrat Sir Robert Burdett repurposed the Anchor Church caves as a dining space for him and his friends. They could eat outside in the privacy of the magical, secluded area. Who wouldn't want to eat here? Historians are excited that there is a building 1,200 years old in plain sight, and they are hoping to find more. Medieval Nubian Cathedral. Using remote sensing technology, a team of Polish archaeologists working in Old Dongola, northern Sudan, recently discovered the largest Nubian church ever found in the region. This suspected medieval cathedral may have served as a seat of power for archbishops when Christianity gained a foothold in the Nubian kingdom of Makuria during the mid-6th century. Earlier this year, a team led by director Artur Obluski from the Polish Center of Mediterranean Archaeology found an empty space in the town's underground citadel. When they investigated further, they expected to find a town square that perhaps hosted communal prayers. Instead, the team encountered the structure which proved to be a vast medieval Nubian cathedral, far from the rest of Christendom, but probably one of the most powerful Christian communities in Africa. At the site, they unearthed 2 apse walls decorated with large figures, as well as a large domed tomb, which Obluski believes may be the burial of an archbishop. The building measures roughly 85 feet wide and is about as tall as a 3-story apartment building. After thriving as a Christian center into the 14th century, Dongola fell under the influence of Islam. Excavations have been ongoing since 1964 and currently aim to document the final period of Christian Dongola, as well as the development of pre-colonial African societies. Further research will hopefully help Obluski and his team accurately date the cathedral, which was likely built during a time period when churches were influential landowners that were typically run by elites and royals. Mediterranean whales. Around 2,000 years ago, during the 1st century, the famed Roman author, naturalist, and philosopher Pliny the Elder wrote about orcas hunting whale calves in the Mediterranean Sea near the Strait of Gibraltar. During the summer, the killer whales viciously slaughtered mother whales and calves in the Bay of Cadiz, according to Pliny's account. What's weird about this is there are no killer whales in the Mediterranean. No one has seen killer whales off the coast of Spain. In fact, not many whale species are seen in the Mediterranean, period, and none are known for breeding in the region, leading researchers to believe that Pliny may have mistaken dolphins for whales. But dolphins aren't known for slaughtering mother whales and calves either. Now, groundbreaking research carried out in recent years suggests that Pliny's account is factual. A 2018 study describes the discoveries of bones belonging to North Atlantic right whales and Atlantic gray whales, which were found among the ruins of an ancient Roman fish processing facility along the Strait of Gibraltar. Unearthed in the ancient Roman city of Baelo Claudia near modern-day Tarifa, Spain, the evidence fits perfectly with Pliny's claims, even if it does not remotely reflect the region's ecology today. Lots of things have changed in thousands of years, not just the rise and fall of empires. The discovery has prompted experts to wonder if the Romans harvested whales, in addition to their known tradition of harvesting tuna and other large fish. According to lead study author Ana Rodriguez, while ancient fishermen lacked the technology to venture out to sea and hunt large whales, it's possible that they may have taken advantage of the opportunity to kill them while they were close to shore. Ana further explained that the study shows how even heavily studied regions have surprising elements to their past, leaving one to wonder what else has been lost to history in places like the Mediterranean. Prehistoric Beast. One of the first vertebrates to evolve on land lived around 310 million years ago in what is now the Mason Creek in Illinois. Dubbed Jormungandr bolti, the creature was a microsaur measuring just 1.9 inches long. It had a long, slender body with short limbs and a blunt skull. The species is named after Jormungandr, the world serpent of Viking mythology that was large enough to wrap its body around the earth, and which once battled Thor, the Norse god of thunder. It had specialized scales that scientists believe were meant for repelling dirt, indicating that the ancient reptile burrowed underground and slithered like a snake, according to a recent study. J. bolti went extinct around 251 million years ago. The fossil is giving scientists the rare opportunity to learn more about early microsaurs, which they believe were the first amniotes, a type of backboned animal that developed embryos and fluid-filled eggs, according to the University of California Museum of Paleontology. If this is the case, then J. Bolte's snake-like body is evidence that animals diversified faster on land than experts originally thought. Just want to give a big shout out to Zach Picer and Earth. Earth is watching our videos. Thanks so much for supporting Origins Explained. If you are new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button for more videos about archaeology and amazing discoveries. Stolen Roman frescoes. Sometime during the 1970s, someone illegally cut out 3 fragments of a 1st century Roman wall fresco in Stabie, a village near Pompeii. The pieces contain images of a dancing woman carrying a tray, a woman's head, and a cherub playing a flute. Law enforcement recovered the relics last year as part of a bigger investigation into illicit artifact trafficking. Records show that the frescoes changed hands between American, Swiss, and English antiques dealers several times during the 1990s. 3 other stolen frescoes that were seized in the investigation were found by police in 2012 in the village of Civita Giuliana, which is located to the northwest of Pompeii. Officers found the works after discovering a hidden tunnel leading to an illegal archaeological dig. Thankfully, police stopped the thieves before they carried out their plans to smuggle the stolen frescoes abroad. The suspects' criminal trials are ongoing. Meanwhile, archaeologists have continued to excavate at Civita Giuliana and have found an array of fascinating artifacts, including the remains of 3 harnessed and saddled horses, as well as the remains of 2 people who died side by side. The return of important archaeological artifacts to their rightful place is a big deal, because once they are taken and switch hands and it becomes all about the money, the entire story gets muddied and confused. Viking-era tombs. Lasting from around 800 AD to 1050, the Viking era was kind of short, yet it made a long and enduring mark on European history. Discoveries from this fascinating period are continuously being made, with one of the latest consisting of 7 Viking-era tombs in the ancient Swedish town of Sigtuna, near modern-day Stockholm. Dating back to the 900s, the burials were built around the time Sigtuna was founded. They contain the remains of 4 adults and 4 children, and 2 of the children are believed to be twins. Based on their small size, the pair appeared to have died during or shortly after birth, according to project manager Johan Runer, who spoke with Live Science following the discovery. Archaeologists also found a handful of artifacts, including a leather belt with iron fittings. Silver coins were found in one Viking's mouth, which was once a common practice throughout the region. He further explained that the tombs are some of the oldest Christian burials ever found in Sigtuna. At the time, it was common to cremate the dead, but the bodies were buried in the ground. The site also contains charcoal pits and caskets bearing evidence of fire damage, which is a first for the area, although these archaeological features are customary for the Viking Christian period. It was kind of a mix between Christian and Viking practices. Some of the tombs had stone structures that are also typical of Viking-age Christian burials. Ancient Egyptian warship. At its peak around 2,400 years ago, the ancient city of Heraklion was Egypt's largest Mediterranean port. Its ruins are now submerged in Abu Qir Bay off the coast of Alexandria, where archaeologists recently discovered a wrecked warship from Heraklion's final years of existence. Found beneath a crumbled temple and 16 feet of clay, the ship's shape suggests that it was built for speed. Measuring 82 feet long, the vessel's hull is 6 times its width, indicating that it could travel quickly and was not meant for holding cargo or passengers. Based on its flat bottom and keel, which are useful for traveling in shallow water, researchers believe the ship was built for the Nile River. Heraklion, also called Tonis, was a melting pot of Egyptian and Greek culture. This is evident in the Abu Qir Bay ship, which contains a blend of Greek shipbuilding techniques and Egyptian design and construction. Experts believe that the vessel was built somewhere in Egypt using repurposed wood from older ships. During the 2nd century BC, a series of catastrophic earthquakes and tsunamis began to destroy Heraklion. The clay ground liquefied, collapsing buildings around the city and causing large stone blocks from the Temple of Amun to crush the ship. The vessel is remarkably well preserved thanks to the clay that buried it. It's only the 2nd warship from Egypt's Ptolemaic period that has ever been found. Coin hoard. Located on the Taman Peninsula in modern-day Russia, the ancient Greek city of Phanagoria had numerous enemies due to its strategic trading position within the Bosporan kingdom. Phanagoria was extremely wealthy, owing to its advantageous location. For centuries, the city faced repeated attacks by the Huns, Turks, and other groups hoping to seize its wealth. When Phanagoria was raided during the first half of the 6th century, a quick-thinking resident placed their coins in an amphora and frantically buried the loot, which they never came back to get. Archaeologists found the container filled with 80 copper coins called staters while excavating a layer of Phanagoria that bears evidence of fire damage from the attacks. Large parts of the city were torched, destroying homes, wineries, and public buildings. Experts believe that the nomadic Huns or the Avars, a group who fled from the Turks, may have been behind the brutal invasion. The coins bear images of late 3rd and early 4th century Bosporan kings. While their minting was discontinued around 341 AD, the coins continued to circulate in the region, coinciding with the use of Byzantine gold as currency. Roman road. The recent discovery of a Roman road submerged in the Venice lagoon indicates that the area may have been filled with settlements before the city was officially founded during the 5th century. Based on past discoveries of artifacts in the area, archaeologists have long known that parts of the now submerged Venice lagoon were accessible by land during Roman times, but they were unsure of the extent that humans occupied the lagoon. A recent archaeological mapping project of the lagoon revealed the presence of 12 structures in the Treporti Channel. Measuring up to 8.9 feet tall and 173 feet long, they appear to have lined a road. The findings build on the previous discovery of what appeared to be paving stones by scuba divers during the 1980s. Additionally, the team discovered 4 more structures that were up to 13 feet tall and 442 feet long, the largest of which they believe was a dock or other harbor structure. It looks like a whole permanent settlement may have existed in the now submerged Treporti Channel. They theorize that the road may have been connected with a larger road network in the Veneto region, and that sailors and travelers used it to travel between the northern Venice lagoon and the modern-day city of Chiaja. Ice Age wolf puppy. A female wolf puppy was just discovered in the Canadian Yukon, mummified and in almost perfect condition. According to Live Science, the wolf pup was preserved in the permafrost for approximately 57,000 years before being discovered by a gold miner in Dawson City. Professor of Anatomy Julie Beechin says the specimen is the most complete one of its kind ever found that can be traced back to the last ice age. Her soft tissue is still there. She has her hair and skin intact, and she still has her little nose looking like a poor little puppy that died just yesterday. This makes her the most complete Ice Age wolf ever found in Canada. By x-raying her teeth, scientists were able to tell a lot about her. She died at just 7 weeks old and is a Canis lupus, also known as a gray wolf. The puppy died all alone for some reason, perhaps when her den collapsed. She was mummified and then perfectly preserved for many thousands of years for us to find. Specimens like this one are fairly common in Siberia, but found way less often in North America, adding to the importance of the discovery. It's also given some insight into when North American wolves first developed. The puppy seemed to be related to both extinct Beringian wolves that used to live in Alaska and the Yukon, as well as Russian gray wolves. This is exciting because it's proof that wolves mixed at some point in the ancient past and migrated across the Bering Land Bridge into Alaska. UFOs in the sky. At the Winter Park ski resort in Colorado, a street camera captured what appears to be an unidentified flying object drifting over the nearby hills. The object was caught while the camera was streaming live video, meaning there is no way it could have been faked. While the camera wasn't exactly designed to pick up random objects hovering in the sky, it was still a modern camera and captured a very clear image of a dark circular object above the hills. The picture was screen grabbed, then sent to the Mutual UFO Network, known as MUFON, for analysis. The person who actually discovered the UFO was monitoring the web camera for the resort. His job is to use the cameras to monitor the weather conditions of the ski hills. Every 3 minutes, the live stream updates. In one of the updates, there was a black disc over the top of the mountain, and in the next frame, there was nothing. While you may be thinking, hey, maybe it was just an airplane, this isn't very likely. Whatever it was had been soaring way too close to the land. There is no way a commercial vehicle would be flying so low. Plus, the witness confirmed with the resort that there were no helicopters in the area at the time. There's no way the unidentified object was a bug or some kind of bird either, because it was simply too big. The only thing that makes sense is that a big black UFO came and went so fast that nobody else noticed it. The tomb of a priestess. A team of archaeologists in Peru recently investigated the chamber tomb of a mysterious priestess from 1200 years ago who once offered blood to the ancient gods. This priestess was part of the Moche culture who lived in Peru between the years 100 and 850 AD before eventually being conquered by the Inca. They had a complex religious system, one that, like others in pre-Columbian South America, practiced blood sacrifice. Her tomb was actually the 8th one to be found at the San Jose de Moro archaeological site since 1991, when excavations began. Experts say she was buried sometime between 700 and 800, but she wasn't buried alone. This woman must have been so important in society at the time that she was buried with full honors, meaning she had 7 other people entombed with her, likely to assist her in the afterlife, as well as ceramic objects, treasures made of copper, and a bizarre and rather creepy funerary mask. One of the most interesting artifacts buried with the priestess was a copper goblet, which archaeologists say was used in blood offerings to the gods. The blood was taken from prisoners of war who were drained of their essence. However, archaeologists aren't sure who these Moche gods were that demanded so much blood. But there's one more incredible thing about the priestess. She may have been one of the rulers of society at the time. Archaeologists have found that the most impressive tombs from the Moche culture all belong to women. They held great religious power and may have actually ruled over the entire civilization from the year 650 until its collapse. Coins of death. In England, a man with a metal detector found 2 incredibly rare coins from the 14th century, originating from a time when the plague was ravaging England and the rest of Europe. The coins were minted during the reign of King Edward III, sometime between 1344 and 1351. Discovered in Norfolk County, the fellow with the metal detector sent the coins to be assessed by professional archaeologists, who were quite frankly astounded by the discovery. They have given 2 possibilities for how the random coins got trapped underneath the ground. They say both were definitely buried at the same time, and that they were probably part of a purse or a treasure stash hidden by somebody who was planning to come back and get them later. That person must have died before they could ever retrieve their treasure. But just how much money can 2 coins be worth? First of all, they are crafted of 96% pure gold. Back in the 14th century, the coins would have been owned by a person at the top tier of society, according to archaeologist Helen Gagey. In today's currency, the 2 coins together would be worth $16,700, not including their historical value. Parallel universe. In Antarctica, the world's largest neutrino telescope may have detected evidence of a parallel universe. It happened in the springtime, when the telescope, which is a grid of specialized detectors constructed on Antarctica's ice, detected strange signals that don't seem to make any sense. The Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna, or ANITA for short, discovered radio signals being produced by high-energy particles from space. These particles normally enter the atmosphere from deep space from above. However, this time, ANITA detected them from beneath the surface. Rather than being beamed down from the stars, they seem to be rising up from the planet. The reason it's so strange is that these particles should not be able to pass through this solid mass that is the Earth. It makes absolutely no sense and could change the way we understand particle physics. Well, some people understand because that is not my field of expertise. One of the theories as to how the particles originated has to do with a parallel universe. Because the particles are coming from the opposite direction that they're supposed to, seemingly passing through Earth by magic, some scientists say there could be an anti-universe that is opposite to our own, in which everything runs backward. This would mean the Big Bang is the end of the universe, not the beginning in this alternate reality. Right now, this is just a theory. It hasn't been scientifically proven, though there is some degree of likelihood. To make matters even stranger, the first time this was detected was 8 years ago, and it's happened frequently ever since. Despite all the data and research, scientists still haven't reached any conclusions. That's physics for ya. The fifth ocean. Finally, the fifth ocean has been unveiled to the world. A decision was made by the National Geographic Society to add the ocean which surrounds Antarctica to the list of the 4 oceans already recognized: the Pacific, the Indian, the Atlantic, and the Arctic. In a rather underwhelming naming decision, the ocean has been called the Southern Ocean. The ocean isn't a new discovery in itself, it's always been there. However, the idea to make it an official ocean has been around for about a century, but until just now, it didn't have popular backing. It was on June 8th, World Oceans Day, that National Geographic announced that they would start labeling the Southern Ocean as a real ocean on maps going forward. While this may not seem like it will have a big impact on the world at large, it actually will. Alex Tate from National Geographic said the biggest impact will be on education, because students up until now have only been learning about the 4 main oceans. Now, hopefully the Southern Ocean will be included in the curriculum, and people will start learning more about the mysterious Antarctic waters. Mysterious underground ping. In a remote community far away in the Canadian territory of Nunavut, a strange sound has been coming from the floor of the ocean. It's been described as a ping, a hum, and even a beep. And it's been heard throughout the Fury and Hekla Strait, an area roughly 80 miles north of Igloolik, a place so cold it even has the word igloo in its name. But here's the deal with the weird beeping. Locals are saying the noise is so strange that it's been scaring away the animals. The hunters who live in the region say that the local sea mammals have all but vanished, coinciding with the first witness of the beep. And according to them, it's coming from the very floor of the ocean. The speculations have been running wild. Some say there are foreign submarines lurking in Canadian waters. Others say there could be a crashed UFO sending out radio signals, trying to contact its mothership. Scientists were quick to point out that the passage is a migratory route for whales. It could just be whales making the noises. But the locals don't think so. They believe there is something mysterious and ominous on the seabed. They just can't figure out what it is. Ancient Italian menu. Scientists have recently discovered what ancient Italians ate 2,000 years ago. These scientists took a close look at materials left behind on over 130 pieces of ceramic pottery crafted in medieval Sicily. The scientists were hoping to learn more about the island's history during the Islamic rule of Sicily between 900 and 1200 AD. They used a special process of residue analysis to discover the chemical vestiges of food left on the cookware. One of the scientists involved in the study called it the first time in which organic residue analysis was used to identify food in a medieval society of many different faiths. Here's what they found. People who lived in medieval Sicily had very diverse diets. They ate sweet, savory, and salty foods. However, when moving into the rural areas outside the city, the diet shifted and became heavy with dairy and grapes. Rural people also ate far more pork than those in the city. One of the weirdest things that scientists found is that they often mixed fruit juice with dishes of meat and vegetables. This is the equivalent of eating plum sauce with your chicken nuggets or having a spritz of lemon on your salad. In other words, the ancient Sicilians were a lot like modern foodies. Wormholes. A wormhole is a bridge that can theoretically connect different points in space-time. A wormhole could, in theory, create a shortcut in which a person could travel to a different point in the space-time continuum. In other words, travel through time. Just recently, scientists have suggested that wormholes may be less science fiction and more reality. The truth to wormholes is incredibly complicated. To create one, the very fabric of space-time itself must be altered, and this involves pushing space-time outward with negative energy. Negative energy is a thing that really exists and has been produced in a laboratory. Scientists believe negative energy is what's behind the accelerated expansion of our universe. In a paper published in the monthly notices of the Royal Society, Russian astronomers said that there could be some wormholes existing at the center of bright galaxies. They also suggested we could find them if we train our telescopes to look for the right characteristics. Specifically, the creation of a wormhole would result in a massive burst of gamma radiation, which we could search for using telescopes on Earth. Astronomers have not actually found a wormhole yet, but the Russian scientists say it's possible. However, we would never be able to travel through one to go backwards in time. A wormhole like this would be positioned at the center of the galaxy, where the temperature would be so intense that anything that went near the wormhole would be instantly incinerated. 6,000 years of history discovered. In England, a project to remove electricity pylons recently led archaeologists to discover the ruins of a Roman settlement and other relics, spanning back a total of 6,000 years. It was a complete accident that this place was discovered. The power pylons were located in a protected landscape, and so there had never been any archaeological investigations in the area. But once a few pieces of ancient stone were found, archaeologists were called in to see what was going on. So far, excavations have revealed the settlement from Roman-occupied Britain, as well as artifacts from the Neolithic period and the Bronze Age. Some of the oldest artifacts include flint tools and scraps of pottery from 4000 BC. As for the Roman settlement, it was actually pretty impressive. Archaeologists uncovered 8 stone buildings, as well as ovens and millstones that would have been operated either using cattle or Roman slaves. There were also 34 burials at the site, with the skeletons spanning a period of 500 years during the Iron Age. Finally, a cremation cemetery from the Bronze Age was also found. In total, the site was used for thousands of years, probably on and off again. Archaeologists don't know exactly what the significance of the location may have been in ancient times, but seeing as it was used by so many different people, it must have been a landscape of great importance. Thanks for watching! Which of these discoveries surprised you the most? Which one do you want to learn more about? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you later! Bye!